we're going to take a quick look at the Dynasty trade market to see if these three wide receivers are either a sell, buy, or hold in Dynasty right now. We've been doing this series all offseason long. What we've been doing is going down the list in ADP, finding a top guy, a guy middle range in value, and a guy on the bottom to look at. Today, our first wide receiver is kind of up there in ADP, still first rounder in startup drafts, highly coveted. A lot of people want him on their dynasty team, and that's Jalen Waddle from the Miami Dolphins. And he's one of the most valuable players in all dynasty sports. He's the wide receiver 5 right now in ADP, 8th player off the board in startup drafts, still just 24 years old. Last season had 6 wide receiver 1 games and 1 wide receiver 2 week, making him a very productive asset for Dynasty. He had 1,393 air yards, ranks 14th in the NFL, averaging 87 air yards per game. Had a 27% share of the team's passing air yards. Remember, Tyreek Hill's there, so that's hard to do. And also had a 27% target share. So he's posting some big boy numbers here. High amounts of volume here in the passing going his way. Also had 2.49 yards per route ran and averaged 6.7 yards after the catch per reception. Then he also had 2.32 yards per team pass attempt. All those are good numbers. His 6.7 yards after the catch per reception is a little bit lower, but remember, he's getting a lot of deep targets downfield, which will lower that a little bit. This all allowed him to have 1,356 yards and 8 touchdowns. He was highly productive last year. Going to the trade market, it's very interesting to see where he's going for. Some trades that we're seeing here on the Dynasty League Football Trade Finder, Jalen Waddle for Jameson Williams, a 2025 first, and a 210 in this year's draft. Jalen Waddle for Calvin Ridley in the 106. Jalen Waddle for Jerry Jeudy and Marquise Brown. Jalen Waddle for Jonathan Taylor. Jalen Waddle for Calvin Ridley and Jameson Williams. Jalen Waddle for Isaiah Pacheco, Jameson Williams, and a third. Jalen Waddle for 2 2023 first. And we've seen this deal go down multiple times on the trade finder. So that's telling us that this is where the market's viewing him as. Where these firsts at, I don't know. But I do not suggest going after back end first since those are more risky. Probably more middle to high. I guarantee Bijan Robinson's not in the mix there, but maybe like a 103 and a 106. Something like that. Something in that range. You're going to have to be creative and mix with that if you want something like that deal. Also, you can get him in packages. You can pay up for him. Startup drafts is probably the best way to get him, though. That's how I can see the best way of acquiring him because he's so expensive. You're going to have to save up to get him. You're going to have to unload some assets to the point that it might hurt your team. You're going to have some extra to really pay up for this luxury. Maybe you can catch a dynasty manager slipping, and maybe you can catch him in a value. I saw on Twitter the other day someone traded Rashad White for him. Like, his value escalated that quick from Leonard Fournette leaving. Sometimes those deals happen, but they're rare. They're so rare. But you're just going to have to kick the tires. There's always a good time to sell if you're rebuilding, retooling on a high-end asset. And that's all it is. High-end assets, always a good time to sell when you need to. But really, he's a good player. He should be valuable in fantasy for a long time. You're doing your best to hold a young wide receiver for a long time. Once you get a good wide receiver like this that's valued in the top 10 and ADP, you want to hold them and build around them. Let them be the anchor of your team. So you're not trying to trade them away. But if that's your only player and you're trying to get better quick, then you may want to do that. That's not an advocate, but that's just a strategy when you have a high-end asset. Not per Jalen Waddle, just a high-end asset move that you can do to really rebuild, retool, restack your team, help you get better quick by acquiring more assets. And when you do that, you want to acquire pieces. It does not look like there's a good time to sell anytime soon. There's not a good time to buy unless something happens negative in the news front. Startup drafts looks like the easiest way to acquire him. So if you want to get him, you might want to jump in a few more leagues, or you're going to have to pay up. Save up some draft picks, save up some players, and just unload if you really want Jalen Waddle. This next player might jump up boards next year. This guy is a first-round prospect who looked good during his rookie season. He's the value right now. You can catch him on the cheap. I don't think that's going to last for long, and I think whoever has him on their team, they're holding him for quite some time. I'm talking about Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders. Right now he's being drafted as the wide receiver 34, 66th player off the board. Last year he had 2 wide receiver 1 weeks, 3 wide receiver 2 weeks on top of that. Also, he missed some time due to injury, so he might have had more production if he was healthy. Also had a 15.4 average at the target, 26.3 snaps were in the slot, so he was not pegged in the slot that much, even though it looked like he was going to from his rookie draft profile. He earned a 15% target share and owned 25% of the team's passing yards. That's with him missing some games. That also counts from him transitioning to the speed of the game from being a rookie. Some trades to look at, there's not many. There's not many to look at. There's a 1-for-1 for him and Treylon Burks, and another 1-for-1 for Mike Williams. So there's not much there, but if you look at the trade analyzer, he's worth a late first. That makes sense. I'm not giving him up for a second-round rookie pick unless a player falls to me that I view more valuable than a second-round rookie pick. And then also, a late first seems right because no one's going to give you a mid-first in this draft for him because there's some good players, some good running backs. That might be the sweet spot, though, to get the deals done. Late first is probably we're going to see more transactions acquired for him because it seems more liquid, especially when things tear off in that latter part of the first round where the running backs start to drop in value, drop in talent. Same with the wide receivers. And if you want to pivot to Jahan Dotson, that's when you're going to want to do it. So when the draft starts to tear off in the first round of your rookie draft, maybe you want to pivot to Jahan Dotson. That could be any time. It really landing spot dependent. We got the combine here. You might sour on some players. So it could be the 1-7, it could be 110, it could be the 202. Let this play out a little bit before you make that your base case. He's a good investment to make. He's still young. He looked like he was being productive last season. He flashed. He did well. He had some big moments, getting air yards downfield. A lot of things we want from our wide receivers he's getting here, and he should only grow. They got rid of Carson Wentz, so maybe they'll build at the quarterback position. Jahan Dotson has proven to be talented so far, so maybe you can catch some production from him for the long term. This next wide receiver hasn't been that productive, but he's dirt cheap. He's got high draft capital. He's still young, even though he's been in the league for a few years. We're talking about Terrace Marshall from the Carolina Panthers, being drafted as the 201st player off the board, the wide receiver 83. At that price, he's free. He's dirt free in startup drafts. Get him if you want him. If you don't, it doesn't matter. He's so cheap. He turns 23 in June. He's 22 right now. He's younger than some of the rookies in this year's rookie class, but he's been in the league for a few years. He had 1 wide receiver 2 week last season, so he wasn't very productive, but he was a guy we were chasing in DFS because he was getting air yards on the regular, he was getting some target share, and he was popping off here and there, looking like he could break out at any time. He had a 13% target share on the whole season and a 22% share of the air yards. The fact that he only got a 13% target share and a 22% share of the air yards means he's a volatile proposition to blow up some games here and there if this continues because he's a deep threat, getting those deep targets, which allows him to do so as long as he's getting snaps on the field. Had a 12.9 average at the target on the season, so really deep threat guy, 17.5 yards per reception. That's solid. That's what you want to chase on the back end of your drafts here because you got a guy with upside. And the upside's coming from the air yards, coming from the deep targets. You can see how he wins with that. Probably more of a DFS play than a long-term play that you want to count on. But again, on the back end of your roster, if the guy's seeing snaps, if the guy's seeing some targets, then that's something you may want because there might be a time where he's firing or they're in a plus matchup and you're hurting a wide receiver and you got him on the back end of your bench and you just throw him in there and close your eyes. He had 102 QB rating when targeted. That looks fine. So these numbers are trending good, but remember his production was running bad, so he's just a volatile asset right now until he proves he can be more. And when it's volatile, the spikes up are rare right now. We need to see him transition. And trade market's saying that. The trades that we're seeing him go for right now is for a 401 pick. There are multiple trades for him going for third rounders. It's probably the sweet spot in deals here. 4th round to 3rd round, somewhere in that. He's cheap. He's free. He's cheap in startup drafts. If you want him, go get him. Maybe they'll upgrade the quarterback position. Maybe not. That's the scary part. This could be an ugly destination This could be ugly for the long term, or it could get better. Maybe they had Derek Carr or something. Maybe we could get some upside here. But he's a speculative asset, a cheap speculative play, a cheap gamble for your team. Do I recommend getting him? It doesn't matter to me really because he's so cheap. You can get whatever cheap guy you want. There are some indicators that he could give you some spike weeks if that's what you're into. If you don't want the spike weeks, maybe you want to just go with the rookies, go ahead and do that. But since he's cheap, there's nothing wrong with that because if he busts or flatlines or doesn't turn it around, you're not even going to notice it 3 years from now. Your team's going to be fine. It's going to be what it was going to be anyways. And the odds of these 4th-round rookie picks, these 3rd-round rookie picks of hitting is just the same as him turning it around. So there's not much difference. So if you like him at this spot, go ahead and get him. If you're in a startup draft and he's going late like we're seeing in ADP, you can get him if you want. If not, go with the other prospect. This late in the draft, at this cheap, it doesn't really matter. But there are some indicators that can help you going forward. But those are 3 wide receivers that we're looking at for this week. We're looking at their trade value. We're trying to decide whether they're worth the trade or worth trading away, whatever we want to do. But at least you have an idea what people are trading them away for or trading for to get them. So drop your thoughts in the comments who you want on the next video. I'll add them in and let you know what they're worth on the Dynasty trade market. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. I'm here to help you build your Dynasty teams, get you ready for your rookie drafts, dropping news, everything else. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.